Well, hey there, kids, and welcome to another episode of Virtual Sunday School. I'm so glad you could join me today because we have a very special and important lesson. So, we are going to be talking about someone that you actually learned about last week. Can anybody remember the name of the prophet that we learned about last week? It was Prophet Elijah, right? Very good. And so what happened with Prophet Elijah? He actually helped a woman. There was a widow woman who lost her husband, and he helped her through God to make money so that she and her two sons wouldn't die, remember? So now, this week, we're actually going to be learning about another woman that Elisha helped. And this woman was actually from a place called Shunem. So the Bible calls her a Shunammite woman. So what was so special about this lady? Well, when Elisha was traveling, he actually stopped by Shunem and he was traveling through there, and this lady invited Elisha to her home. So he was coming over for dinner sometimes here and there, and because Elisha was a very special person of God, she was so honored to have him in her home, right? And what happened? Eventually, Elisha started to come over more often, and this lady from Shunem, she said, well, probably Elisha doesn't have a place to stay, so I have a huge house, and I have an extra room that Elisha could stay in, kind of like this room here. And she gave Elisha everything he needed. That included a chair like you see here, a bed with some pillows, and a lamp. And you know what else? One more thing Elisha needed was a table, probably to keep his books and all his important stuff because he was a prophet, remember? And so what happened was Elisha was so grateful to this woman. He said, you didn't have to go out of your way to make a special room for me. I really appreciate it. So there must be something that you need too. So he asked his servant, he said, there must be something this lady needs. Even though she's very wealthy and she's probably rich and she owns this huge house and she has this extra room for me, there must be something that she needs. So the servant of Elisha said, well, actually, this lady, she doesn't have any kids. Her husband's kind of older, and I never see any kids running around, and so I don't think she has any children. And so the servant said, maybe she wants a child. And Elisha went up to the woman and he said, okay, I talked to God, and he said, by next year, you're gonna have a child. And the lady was like, what? That's impossible. I'm old, and my husband is old, and I don't think God is gonna give us a child, Elisha. Please don't say something that's not gonna come true, because if I did have a child, I would be so happy and excited. But if not, I would be very sad. But remember, when God tells the prophet Elisha something, or if God says something to us, he means it. And he's not making it up, right? So what happened the next year, just as Elisha said, God gave this lady a son. Isn't that amazing? It was a miracle. She thought it was impossible, but God makes anything possible. So what happened was, a little bit later, a few years later, this little boy was out in a field with his dad, and he started to get really sick, like he had a terrible headache. And he said to his dad, my head is hurting, my head is hurting. And his dad started to get really worried because it looked really serious. And so he told his servant, please take my son to his mother over to his house. And so the servant carried the child and went to where Elisha used to stay, in his room actually, and the boy was there, and something terrible happened. The boy actually died. He was so sick that he died. And the woman from Shunem was so sad. Remember how she told Elisha, please don't promise me a child if it's not going to be true. Well, God gave the woman a child, but then he took her away and took the child away. So this woman was so sad. The only thing she could think of doing was trying to find Elisha, right? Because Elisha was the one that said that she would have a son. And so she went and traveled and found Elisha, and she said, please, please, Elisha, you have to come back with me because my son, he's not doing well, and I think that he died, and you have to come save him. You got to do something because you promised that I would have a son, remember? And so guess what happened? Elisha and his servant, they went with the woman, and his servant went ahead of Elisha, and he tried to save the boy, but the boy was not waking up. He was definitely not alive anymore. So then Elisha came into the room, and he said, okay, God, what is it that you want me to do? And God told Elisha to do a very strange kind of thing. So the Bible tells us that Elisha actually put his hand and his head and his whole body over this boy. Remember, the boy is dead now. And so he spread out over this boy, and the boy started to get warm. That means probably his body was getting cold because he didn't have life anymore. And so Elisha stood up and he walked around, and he came back, and he spread over the boy again, just like this. He spread over the boy, and the boy sneezed 7 times, is what the Bible tells us. Wow, that's a strange thing to do. But what happened after that is the boy came back to life. It was a miracle. It was amazing. And the woman came back, and she held her son, and she was so happy. He was finally back. She thought that she lost him forever. But God gave this child to the woman, and God knew that his plan was to bring him back eventually, okay? So that was a miracle, and it's also very important that you guys know that even if something terrible like that happened to the woman, she didn't just give up. She trusted that God gave her this child, and she was gonna try everything she could to see if maybe it was possible that a miracle could happen. So that's what the Bible tells us. And there's a few things I want you guys to remember from this story, because the Bible specifically tells us the items that were in Elijah's room. Do you guys remember what the items were? There's kind of some hints around here. Let's see. What did the Shunammite woman keep in Elisha's room? A chair. That's right. And what about something to sleep in? A bed. And what about something so he could read at nighttime? A lamp and a table, right? And so what happened to Elisha? What did he do so that the boy could come back to life? He laid over the boy, right? And something very strange happened before the boy came back to life. Can you guys remember? He sneezed 7 times. That's right. So it's very important that we remember these things that God tells us specifically that happened, and it was part of a very important story. So I hope you guys learned something from this lesson, and I hope that you send in your memory verses, because Sarah Chichi is looking for your videos, and she's so happy. I get so excited when I get to see you guys say your memory verse. Everyone's doing such a good job, so keep up with it, and I will see you guys back next week.